So let's talk about the results from the play-in games. As we spoke on yesterday, we could see the play-in games start to form, and I spoke about yesterday my predictions. But right now, basically every play-in game is done. I can't talk about the Hawks and the Bulls, but I'm not going to, and I'm just going to say who I think is going to win. First, the Pelicans Lakers. The Lakers won. This means that the Lakers will be facing off against the Denver Nuggets. And honestly, this was a really sad game. I don't mean to be a pessimist, but Zion Williamson scoring 40 points and still getting injured is something that is very shifting when it comes to the playoff picture for the West. We saw the Pelicans put on an amazing performance. We saw Zion put up 40, and the rest of the team just kind of follow his lead. And in the end of the game, they won the fourth quarter and they won the third quarter too. The only thing is that that second quarter by the Lakers was just so impactful. We do have to say that the Lakers did not play up to par. They mostly won because of collective team effort. You know, LeBron James almost got a triple double. He actually was great. He did most of the assisting and he playmates for most of the team. Anthony Davis had a 20 and 15 game, and D'Angelo Russell scored pretty well, but then in the second half basically turned off the flame. I will say that the Lakers should have probably had this in the bag more, and as I see it, I see that Zion Williamson is becoming a great player. He is becoming a great um, impactor on games and on teams, but I just feel like there's a finishing to him. He could never quite finish, and that is a problem. You know, he could play great in big games, he could give you a great season, but when it comes down to being at the end of the season and when you need Zion the most, it seems like he always finds a way to disappear. If it's through injury, if it's through inconsistency. And honestly, as a guy who I have now considered a playoff performer due to the performances that he puts up, it is only a matter of time until the Pelicans start doubting their decision and the money that they gave him. The Kings and the Warriors was a bloodbath. The Kings and the Warriors was a game which originally was competitive, but the Kings just ran away with it through their three-point game. Keon Ellis played a phenomenal game. Harrison Barnes played a phenomenal game. De'Aaron Fox played a phenomenal game. And even though some of their percentages were not great, we do have to say that a guy like Keegan Murray being able to score 32 and most of them just being open threes, Domantas Sabonis being able to get 12 rebounds and 7 assists with 16 points, and the dunks that he was throwing up was something to remark at. In that third quarter, I did think that Golden State was going to make a run because they tend to do that in games. But the way that the Kings just controlled that third quarter and handled Golden State is something that we've never really seen done with Golden State. We're normally used to them getting their way and not being able to, lose in these types of situations. But the fact that they lost and lost convincingly is a sign that the times are changing. And this has opened up a can of worms for the conversation. Should Steph be kept and should Clay and Draymond be traded? Because if we're being honest, for the past 2 seasons now, this experiment hasn't worked. And it feels like the reason why it worked in 2022 was because of the role players that they had around them and the team which they had built. And unfortunately, they don't have the cap space, they don't have the personnel, and neither do they have the culture anymore to build that type of team again. And if they're going to build it, it's going to take for them to move a lot of pieces. So should they separate from the big three? I don't think so. I think that their big three, you need to honor their legacy and make sure that they retire as Warriors. It does not matter that you lose these next few years. You need to lose in glory. And the reason why is because it's very disrespectful for an organization which has had these now 3 players sitting at the top, being their guys, being consistent, and being there every playoff run, and then you just throw away the almost 10 years now that they have of history being a trio, just because you've been having some bad seasons. If it were to be that way, they would have thrown this whole thing away after 2021 when they had spent 2019 without Kevin Durant left. 2020 they had a terrible season. In 2021 they had a terrible season. But I think it is time for the Warriors to regroup, rebuild, realize what's good for them, and move on. Then we have the 76ers versus the Heat. An extremely competitive game at the beginning where the Heat looked like they were going to win. But two phenomenal quarters from the 76ers just made the change for them. Joel Embiid wasn't actually that great. I feel like the biggest impact on this team was Nicholas Batum. He scored more than Tyrese Maxey. He had 5 rebounds, and the way that he was able to affect the game so much in 28 minutes of playtime is honestly scary. You know, they have that meme of why the F is Batum in the fourth quarter. But in this game, Batum was actually able to pull off 20 points and do it in a fashion that won the Sixers the game. And especially in that mid-ranger that was hit where Joel Embiid at the end of the game scored a 3, then scored an and one fall-away layup were absolutely beautiful. Embiid actually won them this game. And the unclutch narrative is still there, but you cannot say that at least he didn't have a great game. For the Heat, it was mostly their guys. Jimmy Butler is not activating yet. He played 40 minutes, but he had 19 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds. Tyler Hero played well, but I feel like the problem is that the main starters, the main guys, did not do their thing in the second quarter. You know, the Miami Heat shot better in everything except free throws, and the biggest thing for the Sixers was that they were just getting fouled a lot. That's how Embiid plays, that's how the Sixers play, and in my opinion, the Heat didn't do a good job of playing postseason basketball. And this, in my opinion, is the most impactful match of this day. Look, yes, the Warriors losing is big, but the Warriors were not going to beat the Lakers, I don't think, or the Pelicans if they won. Because let's face it, even the Warriors in the playoffs, they were not going to do anything against other teams. And yes, I know we like to think about the Warriors as a championship, whatever, but it's like if they would have had the 8th seed in the West, they would have had to face the Thunder. And when it comes to the way that they play, they can't keep up. They're too old now to keep up with that pace. They're not the 2016 Warriors anymore. And with the Pelicans and Lakers, I feel like both of those teams are pretty confident in the fact that they can still make the playoffs. The biggest problem with this is the fact that the 76ers and Heat was the deciding game, in my opinion, because it decided, are you going to play the Boston Celtics or are you going to play the New York Knicks? That I feel like is the biggest thing and takeaway from yesterday. Look, yes, it is impressive that the 76ers won, but now they get such an easier playoff path that it is not even funny. Like they get to go through the Knicks, then they may face Boston, but they get to have some leverage in that first round. Last season, I know that Miami beat Milwaukee in the first round, but the chances of them beating Boston with the way that they've looked this season are extremely slim, and this is coming from a Heat fan which wanted them to win today. So you know I'm not coming with the bias, but in my opinion, I do believe that was the most impactful game. I feel like whoever faces Boston is probably going to lose. And now they have to go and win against basically the Chicago Bulls because the Bulls are up 18 points on the Atlanta Hawks at the end of the third quarter. So you have to go up against the Bulls. You have to go up and do your thing. But it's like, what happens if you don't win that game? You had one chance, you were up big, and now the problem is that you did not execute, and now you have to go and play another game and play the Celtics if you win that game.